Complexity and uncertainty are both important trends that are happening in the world today, and that's because as the world becomes more interconnected, and you have globalization, you have the internet, you have all these trends that are forming more and more connections, economic connections, social connections between people, between societies. What that tends to create is a lot more variables that are at work in determining what's going to happen in the future. So complexity is actually something that manufactures uncertainty. It manufactures it because the interdependence between things tends to produce new things all the time. And those new things are hard to predict. So what a lot of companies or governments call uncertainty is really the effect of complexity. And that's why I think it's so important to study complexity, because actually studying complexity is tantamount to better understanding uncertainty. I think one of my favorite applications of complexity in finance is the 2008 financial crisis, because that's a great example of a positive feedback loop. And without going into too much detail, what was going on in California, where I live, during that time, was that the more house prices went up, the more people could take out of their homes and mortgages, and a cash-out mortgage, and use that money to pay off their mortgage if they were going to be delinquent on it. So what was happening was, instead of people falling behind on their mortgage payments, they were cashing out money on their mortgage to make those payments, right? So as the delinquencies fell, the mortgage companies thought, oh, well, now we can make more loans because they're less risky. And so they made more loans, and that brought more people into the market. Bringing more people into the market caused prices to go up higher, which allowed people to cash more money out of their homes. And so it was a positive feedback loop that was causing delinquencies to fall as home prices went up. But positive feedback loops can also work in reverse. So if home prices fell, then what was going to happen is delinquencies were going to spike for the very same reason. And that's exactly what happened. So no one expected delinquencies to spike in the way that they did when this positive feedback loop ran in reverse. So I think that's a great example of how a complex pattern was used during that time to anticipate what was going to happen during the 2008 crisis. My activities in trying to understand complexity is in really trying to identify patterns that occur in complexity. The problem with complexity is it's not like a probability where you can just have neatly assigned probabilities about what may happen in the future. And so the question is, what can we do when things are so complex, when there's so many variables involved, when they're so interconnected with each other? And luckily, science tells us that order arises from complexity. And when I say order, what I mean is that different patterns tend to occur and reoccur over time. Things like positive feedback loops, which happen, for instance, in epidemics, right? When they start out and they grow very, very fast, and then they peter out after a while. So that's a kind of pattern that we see in many different places, including financial panics, right? So there's a big opportunity, I think, to take what science has learned about order in complexity and apply it to social systems like economics, and to better anticipate what's going to happen in the future as a result.